Robert Smith, do the right thing. Sort Gary Sykes' belt out and put it in history books that he's British champion outright at super featherweight. And I'll leave you alone, Robert Smith. Alright? What you forget?
I'm Peter Fury, and don't forget to subscribe to Porky's Corner, because I've been a helmet of the month and you need to listen to me. Yeah? So follow him, yeah? And get the fella some followers up, for Christ's sake. He wears his heart on his sleeve, he's a good man, Russ. So follow Porky's Corner, he says it as it is, and you know, I appreciate the helmet of the month, Russ. No problem.
No problem, thank you very much.
You're welcome, mate.
You hardcores out there, how you doing? Big P here, the voice of hardcore boxing. I'm on my way to Dewsbury to see Julian. He's got a bit of news regarding Gary Sykes. Let's hope it's good. Let's hope that Robert Smith's done the right thing. Alright, so we'll crack on. Alright. So peace out. Well, I'm here in Dewsbury. Nice to see you, Julian.
And yourself, Russ, how are you keeping?
Alright, you're looking well.
Thank
Been
you.
training?
I've not been training for a couple of weeks actually. I have sciatica and I have a bad back, so I do train about 3-4 times a week quite hard. And then I pulled my back 2 weeks ago. Just embarrassing, really. You know, you get to the stage where my partner, she was putting the socks on for me. Literally couldn't move, so I'm just easing off now, and I'm ready to probably start training at the weekend, because I do miss it. It's good for that.
Yeah. I had a lot of comments. I saw some of your comments when I did the Mickey Theo video at New Year.
Yeah.
Or at Christmas, I forget now. It was a few weeks ago, and bit of a debate on Muhammad Ali versus Mike Tyson. What's your take on that? Who would have won if it had been a 1967 Ali against an 87 Tyson?
Yeah, I saw Mickey's video, and I said to you earlier off camera, I like Mickey. I think he's a character. And Mickey, I might not say it to your face, mate, but I really didn't see where he was coming from. It's one of those, isn't it? And for me, and I'm always trying to be polite, but it's almost like it becomes this casual question, actually. It's when people say, who would have won, Ali or Tyson in the primes? And when people ask that question, first of all, it makes me think, well, what you've actually not done there is you've not asked the right question, because that's not the two greatest heavyweights who's ever lived. Of course, Ali is one of them. But you've got fighters like, I would be asking who would win, a prime Ali or a prime Joe Louis, or a prime Ali and Larry Holmes, or Dempsey or Marciano. Those for me are like more compelling questions. I can't see, there's a lot of myths surrounding Mike Tyson. I can't see, and obviously this is speculative and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, how Tyson would have beaten Ali at any range, at any stage. I can't see it. So the first myth regarding Mike Tyson, and this is what Mickey, with respect Mickey, said, was Tyson knocked everybody out in the first round. Now that's almost become popular culture. Now, first of all, Tyson didn't knock everybody out in the first round. It just didn't happen. The most notable win he had in the first round was Michael Spinks, and Michael Spinks was a great fighter, unfortunately remembered for that 90-something seconds with Tyson. But Spinks was a light heavyweight, he moved up to heavyweight, he beat fading Larry Holmes and Jerry Cooney, and an average Teflon Stansted. But Spinks was generally, it was smaller at the weight, but it had been around for a long time. It was fading. It was like 14 years since he won the Olympics. And that result really flatters Tyson. Tyson was a really good fighter. He exploded on the scene. But there were certainly some fights where he struggled. He didn't struggle on the points, but if you look at James Tillis, who was like a poor man's Ali, Tillis showed with some good footwork and some good some good defence and good flurries. How to contain Tyson. Mitch Green did very, very similar. Jose Revolta took him into the 10th round. So you see where I'm going with this. Jesse Ferguson went 6. Later on, Pinky Thomas went 6. Tony Tucker gave him a good 12-round fight. Obviously, Tyson won clearly on the cards. Tucker wasn't intimidated whatsoever. Bone Crusher Smith, slightly different. He was really negative. But what all those fighters showed was you could mess Mike Tyson around. So the myth that Mike Tyson knocked everybody out in the first round, it's a myth. That's all it is. It's almost like there's a generation of people who think that boxing started with Mike Tyson and finished with Floyd Mayweather. And I always smile at that view. So if you look at Ali, you look at the flip side. Mickey made a comment that says, Ali would go 15 rounds. Mike Tyson knocked everybody out in the first round. Well, first of all, boxing's over 15 at the time, or 12 rounds. It's not over 1 round. There's no 1-round fights in boxing. Boxing's over 12 or 15 rounds. If you find a way to win, you find a way to win. And also Ali had a really good KO percentage, by the way. Something like a 60, 70 odd KO percentage. So Ali didn't go 15 rounds every time. So that's another myth. Now, Mike Tyson would have had one way to win, and that would have been to explode really, really quickly and to catch Ali. Now, Tyson certainly had the fastest hands in terms of combinations I've ever seen on a heavyweight. He had good feet, he had good positioning, but Ali was just so clever. Ali would tie you up, he could float, he was such a fantastic, skillful fighter. But Ali, and Tyson said this himself, it was also a mean son of a bitch. You get Ali in the trenches, he was mean. He would continually throw punches at you. He was also massively durable, but what he also showed, what Mike Tyson never showed, he showed he could be hit, he could be hurt, he could be dropped, and he could recover from those scenarios. So Tyson dropping Ali, let's be honest about this, we have to be objective. It's not the most unlikely scenario. Tyson finishing Ali is something completely different. And, Mike Tyson didn't finish everybody he dropped at that point. He scored knockdowns with Revolta, and then he took several rounds to catch up with him again. And I can see Ali moving around, just picking Tyson off, tying him up, the mind games, etc. Tyson's tank starting to go down. Tyson getting frustrated. Ali would have been way too much for Tyson. Tyson had one way to win that fight, as I've just said, to get out there and catch Ali. Ali had so many ways to win. Ali would have won in the trenches against Tyson. Another myth with Tyson is that he was a really good infighter. Mike Tyson wasn't a great infighter. Tucker, Smith, those guys tied him up. They tied him up quite easily, actually, and frustrated him. Pinky Thomas did the same for 4 or 5 rounds. Tyson's danger point was at mid-range. That closing from that mid-range to close range and letting his hands go on the way in. That was Tyson's danger point. Holyfield showed the way to beat Tyson. For anybody who says Tyson's been in prison and he was shot to pieces, Holyfield was the one who was considered shot to bits at that point. And Holyfield showed what you do. A guy comes on tram lines, what do? You pivot. He continues to come on the next set of tram lines, you pivot, you turn, you push him back. And that's exactly what Holyfield did. Way too much of a man for Tyson. And Ali would have just done the same thing. I can't see a scenario where Tyson can live with him. Another Tyson myth, and it is a long answer, Russell, but you're never going to get a short answer from me. People want these in-depth explanations, but another myth with Tyson was he was never the same after Cus D'Amato died. Cus D'Amato died in just the second year of Mike Tyson being a professional. I think he'd had 10 or 11 fights when D'Amato died. Tyson hadn't approached his peak. Tyson's peak years, D'Amato had been long gone. So that's, again, it's just complete folklore. Tyson didn't train for Buster Douglas. Folklore. He might not have been the focused individual that he was, in 86, 87, when he unified the belt. He might not have been that focused individual. But Tyson was still in condition. He looked in condition against Douglas. He was at a good fighting weight. He came out fast. He came out like he always does. But he was met with a really solid jab. He was met with right hands. He was met with everything coming back at him. And that's what you had to do with Tyson. You have to take him out of his rhythm and get yourself into your own rhythm, which is what Douglas did, which is what Holyfield did. Tony Tucker did it in parts, but if you look at Douglas and you look at Holyfield and you look at Ali, you're talking a different level. So first of all, but just to kind of summarise Mickey and everybody else, Mike Tyson didn't knock everybody out in the first round, and nobody knocked Ali out in the first round.
When did you ever see Mike Tyson in a fight where he overcame adversity?
Never. He crumbled. He was a typical on-top fighter. That was his mentality. And when he struggled to get his own way, he would lose his head. You know, we saw elements of that with Bone Crusher Smith, which was always really frustrating actually, because the only time Smith opened up was about 10-15 seconds to go when he fought Tyson. He had a lot of success and he stunned Tyson a little bit towards the end of that fight. But you never saw Tyson come back from adversity. You saw Jack Dempsey knocked out of the ring against Louis Firpo and get back in that ring. You saw Joe Frazier overcome some absolute terrific punishment from Ali in those fights and continued to fight.
Larry Holmes took punishment against
Larry Holmes,
Bernie Shavers.
100%. Holmes was dropped against Shavers. No man had the right to get up from that. And he came back, not just came back to stop Shavers, but he came back to dominate at the end of that 7th round. Ronaldo Snipes dropped Larry Holmes. You know, great fighters always show that ability, or most of the time they show that ability to get off the deck. Ray Leonard did this before. You know, great fighters do this. Tyson never showed it. Tyson crumbled. If he didn't get his own way with you and he couldn't mentally and physically dominate you, he would run out of ideas and he would become easily frustrated. Now Ali could frustrate anybody. So I totally agree with you, Russell. I think the 66, 67 version of Ali beats Tyson, but I also think that the Ali version that beat George Foreman beats him as well. It's a slightly different Ali. Yes, he'd had a couple of losses. He'd lost to Kenny Norton and the first Joe Frazier fight. He obviously avenged those, but the 74 version would have just mugged him as well. You know, he'd become a little bit more dense in his body. He was more physical, obviously more experienced, and I can't make a case for Tyson beating Ali on any level. And I really struggle making a case for Tyson beating Larry Holmes as well. I think that's equally a nightmare kind
Well,
of
he
fight.
knocked Larry Holmes out, didn't he? But he'd been 2 years on settee, I know.
Exactly. He was inactive, and I think they brought that fight forward. Holmes had even less time to prepare. And Holmes had sort of shown the decline, even when he was, you know, undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. He'd started to show the decline after he beat Cooney, and then he struggled with Tim Witherspoon. He had a real struggle with Carl Williams, and Holmes had shown that decline. Then he lost back-to-back fights with Michael Spinks, and then, as you said, he was on the settee for a few years, doing not a lot, and then he came back, and it wasn't the wisest comeback ever, was it? So, you know, even then, he still gave Tyson 3.5 rounds of things to overcome.
Yeah, I was looking at Ali's record. He went 6-1 against Olympic champions.
I mean, he's just an unbelievable record, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
he was an unbelievable fighter. If you look at the guys he beat, you know, the Zora Follies and you know, the Frasers and Formans and things like that. And also, if you look at Ali won twice as a massive underdog. You know, he beat Sonny Liston as a huge underdog, and he beat George Foreman. When did Mike Tyson ever win as an underdog? When did Tyson ever overcome odds before the first belt? It never happened. He was always a big favourite to win those big fights. And when the odds were against him, obviously later on in his career, he wasn't the same fighter, but he got absolutely trounced, didn't he? And he never showed, to your point, he never showed that fortitude or that resilience to come back. If you pushed him back, Tyson was beat.
yeah. Okay, moving on from that then. Ben Davidson's done an interview this week that's probably just about upset every old school trainer in the country at the moment with phones being red hot.
Is the politics in boxing, as they always call it, or whatever it is behind the scenes, is that sometimes as much as a fight, you know, out of the ring?
Look, you see the politics, don't you? I look on the social media, yeah, and it's all cringe, utter fucking shite that I look at. Yeah, I turn it off. The speeches out some of them's mouth, the way they go on, the way they conduct themselves, they're not welcome through my fucking door. Yeah, I don't roll like that. You know, listen, I'm not saying they're wrong. just the way I see it myself. I can't be bothered with all this arse licking up and down to get on a show. Yeah, you don't want me on the show, fuck off, go somewhere else. You know, listen, it is what it is. You know, I can only speak how I see things. I think boxing has become a cringe sport for the dickheads that's in it. I'm interested in real fights, real fighting men, getting it down in here, getting it on in the ring. That's all we're interested in at the end of the day. We ain't interested in anything else. We ain't interested in sticking our chest out and wanting to be the best trainer in the world. We want to be this, we want to be that. You know, I want to be more famous than the fighter. Let's get rid of all that shit what I see on social media 24/7, yeah? And let's get the fighter where he needs to be.
Well, what obviously he's a young lad and he's coming through and that, and he's probably one for the future. But what can you explain his comments?
Well, first of all, I don't really know Ben. I had a couple of very short exchanges with him on a Facebook page I used to be on, very, very short. But I look at some of the stuff he does with fighters, so I'll always be objective. You know that, and I look at some of the things he does with fighters. I look at some of the sort of nuances and subtleties that he does, and I listen to his language in the gym when he's talking and in interviews, etc. And I like a lot of what he does. So first of all, I'm not going to turn around and say he's not a good coach, because he couldn't work with the fighters he's working with if he didn't have good abilities as a coach. So that's the first thing. Put that to one side. The second thing is, it must be quite hard for Ben Davison, because it's a bit like boxing. And it's like coaches and all of us. None of us have media training. None of us have that PR training. And we also know how to deal with this type of thing. So Ben Davison, it must eat away at him, because he knows pretty much every coach in the country are saying the same thing. You landed on your feet. You got gifted this opportunity, and you took it and you worked your ass off, but you got landed on your feet, you got gifted this opportunity, and it must resent him somewhat. It's a little bit like the silver spoon, isn't it? When, you know, Eddie Hearn must have had that before he proved himself. Eddie Hearn must have had, you've been nothing without your dad, you got the silver spoon treatment, etc. And when you hear that all the time, that must hurt Ben Davison. It must jar him, because in his head he's thinking, no, hang on a minute, I'm working my bollocks off here. I'm working hard. And I believe I'm a gifted coach, and, you know, I get good feedback from the fighters I work with, and there's an element of him what must be frustrated. But the media interview, what he did, the interview we did with Steve Bunce, I thought it was really naive. I think it's one of those things he'll look back and he'll regret that. He won't regret that now, because he fundamentally, as a young guy, he thinks he's right. Okay, he's got a platform. His results are looking good, and the fighters' results, by the way, they're not his, and the fighters' results. His results are looking good, but I think he's frustrated, he's angry, and he's just vented, and he'll think he's right. As you get older, you get more experienced, and I've said things in the press before, and I've done things on a lower level than Ben Davison, but I've said things I regret, and you just sometimes, we're creatures of mood, aren't we? If we're in a certain mood, you wake up and someone asks you a question, you say the wrong thing. If something's on your mind and you're being agitated, you say the wrong things. We don't always respond. And one of the things I learned through senior management was, whenever you're feeling an emotion and someone asks me to do a certain thing, I respond later. I sleep on it and I respond later. So it stung him, the criticism stung him. But what he said is quite unfair. Some of the things he said, there's some truth to it. So Ben, there's definitely some truth to some of the things you've said. I think he's disappointed with the general standard of coaching in this country. I found that myself. I've said that myself. When I started getting involved in that, there were certain coaches who were high-level coaches who got to work near, or got to see and got to observe. And I was really frustrated myself. I thought, you know, I expected this person to be someone who I could maybe learn from. I expected this person to be a bit more high-level. They're pretty basic. And that's why I found that I was frustrated at that as well. But what he's done is he's made a generalisation. The generalisation he's made is, you know, the level of coaches probably in this country. Well, I don't think that's right. And first of all, do you know every coach in the UK? Have you worked with every coach in the UK? Have you studied the methods? Of course you haven't, okay? If the level of coaching, let's start at grassroots through to amateur boxing, if the level's so poor, look at the increased success we've had over the last 20, or so years with the Olympic Games. We couldn't get Olympic gold medalists for love nor money. You know, with Finnegan, we've got Minter got a medal and things, but generally, we'd come back from the Olympics every time with nothing.
Robin Reid won a bronze, didn't he?
Robin Reid won a bronze. I mean, the last Olympic Games.
Olga Harrison 2000 gold.
Last year we got 7 medals at the Olympics. We were 5th on the medal table. So first of all, your assertion that the standard's poor, the fact that we are doing so much better in the Olympic Games over the last 5 or 6 Olympics, that shows that the level is not poor. The level is good, and it's getting better because our Olympians and our elite amateurs are getting better. So first of all, he's wrong on that sense. And the second thing, whilst we have more world titles available now, there's more weights. I was a sort of child of the 70s, and I remember the 70s and late 70s when I was a kid in the early 80s. We couldn't get world champions for love nor money in professional boxing. Yes, there are more opportunities now, but we dreamed of having the heavyweight champion of the world. Which something we only ever dreamed of. There was kind of links to Bob Fitzsimmons. We were stretching things a little bit by saying Bob Fitzsimmons spent a bit of time in Cornwall, he was born in Ireland and went to New Zealand, etc. And we had to wait until Lennox Lewis, who's also had a Canadian dual citizenship, to get a heavyweight champion of the world. Where am I going with this? Klitschko had his reign. We've had massive success having heavyweight champions. We've had Lennox. We look at us now. We've got the best heavyweights, effectively, or some of the best heavyweights in the world. So my point is, we've got more world champions now, let's say the last 5 or 6 years, than we've had in a long time. So if the level of coaching is so poor, why is the amateur game lifting? Why are we getting all this success in professional boxing? So I think he's made generalisations. So Ben, you're wrong with generalisations. I think you have a point that the level of coaching in this country, to some degree, is poor. I have said it several times before. There aren't many teachers there. Where are the teachers? Where are the Eddie Futchers, the Ray Arcells, etc.? Where are those teachers there? I think there are fewer and fewer teachers, and we've got this influx of conditioners and second coaches and assistant coaches, all this nonsense. So you've got a point there. You've got a point there, but only a point. I think you've made too much of a general comment, and you're going to upset a lot of people. Now, the one part where Ben is completely wrong, this is not an attack on Ben. Ben struck the first blow, and he's basically made an attack on a lot of really good coaches out there.
Well, by saying they're lazy.
Saying they're lazy. Now, I'll tell you this, and I'm not speaking for Julian McGowan. I'm speaking for a lot of professional coaches out there, right? Lazy, none of it. We are not. Okay, so I don't know what you did or what you do for a living. I don't know if you have a 9 to 5. I'm pretty sure you're a full-time coach. So I had a young stable of a couple of pros and a British champion. Okay, 12 round fighters. Effectively, those guys needed my time. I had 4 children at home, different stages, babies, things like that. I worked in a senior role at a high level, working long hours, managing multi-million-pound projects. I had my own gym. I built my own gym, mate. Okay, I would come home. My day would start at 6 o'clock, 6:30. You heard Gary talk about the sprinting and the stuff we would do. I'd be up with Sykes on some mornings, get the kids up, myself, my ex-wife, get the kids up, have my day. My half an hour lunch wasn't lunch. It was dealing with sparring that night. It was making phone calls, doing what I needed to do, dealing with the press. I would rush home, and I was not too much detail, sorry about this, but I would rush home, pick my kids up from different schools, different nurseries, different carers. I used to get home before my wife at the time. I would get in the house, I would put things in the oven, I would run out with the dog, I would come back from walking the dog, the kids would be sat at the table, I would wait with my kit bag, I would wait for my wife to pull up at the bottom of the drive, and I would walk down on the downside of a marriage, I would walk down the drive, say hi, bye, out the door, pick Sykes up, go on the M62, sparring, gyms, whatever. I would get back at 9, 9:30. My tea would be a burnt jacket potato because I'd been out doing whatever. I would then pick up the phone to managers like Steve Wood, Chris Aston, would have various conversations. Then I'd watch 2 hours studying, etc. So what I've just described there, my day was no different to a lot of full-time pro trainers out there. So to make that assertion that people are lazy is absolute nonsense, and it's an insult, mate, because what I see with certain full-time coaches is they do a couple of hours in gym, and then they're in Marbella having a nice coke, having a nice lunch, and then they do a couple more hours in the gym. Lazy. You couldn't have done my routine, mate. You couldn't have done it. You couldn't have done the hours that I used to do. Nobody gifted me a gym. And to all those trainers out there, I know who those trainers are. They built their own gyms. They work for a living. Some of those guys are in factories on building sites working all day. And then they go home. And then shout out to the amateur coaches as well. They do a full day's work and then they go and they're working in the gym. For free. Just like myself. You don't make money off it. And to be called lazy. So there's that aspect of it. So that's a nonsense. And it's an insult. And then there's the other aspect of it. Not every coach, and I mentioned Jason Gledhill recently as a fab amateur coach. Malin Akai, a good friend of mine, really, really good amateur coach. Right? Not everybody's in boxing, in coaching for the profile. We're not all massively concerned about being an IFL. When I had my gym and I was working, I would never mention the name, but I had one full-time pro, a well-known professional, contact me asking me to train him. I said no. I've got too much on with Gary and everything else. And I said no. We're not all about the views. We're not all about IFL. We're not all about the the kudos with working with top fighters and being around the game. Some of us just like coaching. Some of us like coaching. Doesn't mean we're not smart. Doesn't mean we're not developed. I'll talk technically about boxing with anyone at all. I'll challenge anybody, and that's not arrogance. That's just a state. I'll challenge anybody. I'll talk about the jab for an hour. I'll give you demos. I'll talk about the jab for an hour and not come up for breath. I'll talk about the jab and elements of the jab that people just don't cover. And that's just not me who can do that. That's other coaches who can do that. So to say people are lazy and to say, look, listen, you were in a fortunate position. Good for you. You're running with it. You're able to do it. You've got to be a good coach, but you're in a fortunate position, the right place at the right time to be, in your words, to be fast-tracked. And that's not because there aren't other good coaches out there who couldn't do equally as good a job as you. It's just not everybody chooses this, Russell. Boxing is not going to pay for this. I have to work for a living. And boxing is not going to pay. You mentioned earlier on another coach, I won't mention his name, who was a cab driver. That's a hard job. That's long hours. And that's somebody who's sat in a cab all day dealing with dickheads to then go in the gym and to work with fighters. That isn't lazy.
Yeah, it's an hard job, Cabby.
It's an hard job. Steve Mailer, before Terry Flanagan was world champion, he used to turn up at his gym and there'd be him and Terry, and there'd be like cement on the gear because they'd just come from the fucking building site. Terry Flanagan had just done, Steve Mailer had just done 10 hours on a building site. Lazy.
Did Terry Flanagan work on a building site?
It was a builder's labourer, was Terry Flanagan. He used to train on a morning with Steve Mailer, 6 in the morning till 8. Work all day on a building site and then finish the building site, little kids at home, and then he'd go in the gym. We're not all gifted gyms. We're not all gifted salaries. We're not all gifted 5 or 10% of, and it's not bitterness. And some people might be jealous. You might feel that some people are jealous. Some people are not. We're just saying we all make our choices. And it doesn't make you the best coach to be the most well-known coach. I heard recently someone make a comment. It's not an attack on Dave Caldwell, by the way. They said there was a talk about Caldwell and says one of the best coaches in the UK. And I just thought, how do you know that?
Who said that? Adam Smith.
One of the commentators, whoever it was, it might have been Nick Allen, I can't remember, and whoever it was, Costello, one of the best coaches in the UK. How do you know? Have you spent 6 months studying other coaches? Have you worked in one of these amateur boxing gyms? One of these amateur boxing gyms where you've got 2 guys who work full time and every year they get 10, 12 national champions. Serious coaches, serious. Have you done that? No, you haven't. You shouldn't make generalisations. What you should say is one of the most well-known, one of the most high-profile coaches in the country. But one of the best coaches in the country. It's just an insult. It's just like saying just because someone was on the X Factor and got round to the last 6, they're one of the best singers in the country. Ridiculous. So you're just upsetting people by saying that. I understand why you've said it, but to call people lazy. Absolutely. It's a big insult, and I think we forgive you because you're young and we've all made those outlandish statements. I still continue to make the odd one. But, you know, we don't, I keep repeating the point, we don't all choose to do this as our first profession. Doesn't mean we're not good, doesn't mean we don't love boxing, and it doesn't mean we can't coach. It's just because we choose not to do it. I've got a mortgage I need to pay, so I've got to work first to pay that mortgage.
Hey Max, how you doing mate? Russell just sent me a video of you doing a little bit of a bag workout. Good work mate, a couple of little tips if you want them. Bearing in mind I'm 50-year-old and riddled with arthritis, so it's not going to be up to much. A couple of little things I noticed that you were doing. Try and break your habit, okay? So when you were throwing your jab, every time you threw your jab, and I'll do it in slow motion, you put your head down at the same time. So that could become quite predictable like that. Putting your head down every time you throw a jab. Imagine you just get suckered, throw a right uppercut. Whenever you put your head down, yeah, you ideally want to do that when you're throwing power shots or when you're blocking or when you're in the pocket. The jab should be at a nice long range. So when you're throwing that jab, you don't want to be putting your head down every single time. So get your body position comfortable when you're on the outside, because obviously the jab's the outside shot. Get your body position comfortable, chin nice and low, nice and relaxed. Just before you throw it, so instead of going like that, literally, nice and fast, nice and relaxed, and just relax and keep the head position as it is when you're throwing your shot. Just like that. Just like that, in and out, nice and fast, yeah. No head movement, that's not coming there, that's not overbalancing. Backhand nice and tight. In range, nice and loose, and try and vary that jab a little bit as well. So what happens is everybody throws the jab in the same spot. What I always say is 4 points of a jab, yeah? Eyes, chin, chest and solar plexus. And every jab you throw with different speed, different power, different range, different body position. But try and vary it a little bit. Just count 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 being the eyes, like that. 3 being the chin. Yep. 2 being the solar plexus. If you notice, I'm now dropping the height on the lower shots. Abs again, being a distraction punch, yeah? 4, 3, 1, 4, 3. Vary it all the time, okay? That was just one little thing that I noticed. Another thing that I noticed as well was when you were throwing that right up to the body, okay, there were a couple of little mistakes there, just a couple, all right? First thing you were doing is your arm was stiff and you were taking your arm and everything else with a shot, you were going like that, opening your rotation, making yourself nice and wide and nice and open. Whenever you throw a hook to the body, and ideally you want to be throwing that left hook, even if you're going to throw right up to the body, which is a shot, it's not an easy shot to get off, you got to drop your height. You've got to drop your height, because if you think of a hook to the body, if it's a right hook to the body, pop, or a left hook to the body, it's a power shot, okay? It's a power shot, but it's a mid to close range punch. So what you definitely don't want to be doing is opening yourself up there, and also you're doing a little bit what I call the chicken wing, is lifting your elbow up like that. Get your elbows tucked in, get the position comfortable, drop your height, and then throw it from your chin back to your chin. See that? From your chin, boom, back to your chin. Not throwing it from your hip or throwing it from your waist. Same with the left hook. People throw that left hook and they'll lift the right elbow up like that, they'll telegraph the shot. You got to drop from your chin. So punches start at your chin. Body punch, head punch starts at your chin. There, like that. Again, back to the jab. Snap, yeah, snap. Chin position, like that.